to just share with you something that was stirring in my spirit as I was praying and meditating today. And if I get to my scripture, I'll be in Numbers 13, and that's where I'll go in just a minute. But I was preparing, and I was speaking with a friend of mine, and their family just, in the last couple years, they adopted a puppy from the pound, I suppose, and it come from a very abusive place, come from a very abusive home. And so they were just talking about it with me in passing. We were talking about many things, and this was one of the things that we were speaking about. And when he told me, it prodded my spirit, and I knew I needed to go here tonight because many of you are not saved and you struggle with this, but many of you are saved and you still struggle with this. And so they were talking to me about this dog, and they said, well, when the home it was in, of course, it was beaten, it was yelled at very profusely, but it was also locked in the kennel all day except to use the bathroom. They even put the dog's food in the kennel, and they kept it caged all day and all night. And sometimes it got so bad that it even used the restroom in the kennel. And so it was just locked in there, total bondage. And so when they brought the dog home to the family, they said, I almost didn't buy it a kennel because it's been in a kennel all its life. I don't think it would want to even be in a kennel, but they bought one just to have it a place to sleep. And when they put the dog in the kennel, it would not come out of the kennel. Even though it had been transferred to a new home, even though it had been adopted and perhaps its name changed, it was stuck in this cage. And they said, you got to hear me, they said, we even opened the door to the kennel and left it open, and it would not come out. For 2 months, the first 2 months of living in this new home, it would not come out. Not because the door was closed, but because, and this is how he said it, and this is what prodded me, he said, he didn't even know how to come out. He didn't know how to. The door was open. He had the ability to, and if he came out, he would not have been abused. He wouldn't have been beaten. He wouldn't have been neglected. He would have been treated very well, but he did not have the frame of mind, though his name had been changed, though his adoption was made final, and though the atmosphere was totally different. Everything about his life had changed except this. And he didn't have the ability to come out of the cage because of his upbringing. This is something even now I realize that many of you that are unsaved are still in that old home. Many of you, however, are saved. You've been adopted. You've been put in a new home, and the atmosphere is different. Your name's been changed. It's been written in the Lamb's Book of Life. You're saved by the blood. You've been washed and you've been cleansed. You've been baptized, but your mind has not yet been renewed. That's why Paul said, I pray you be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You see, the mind is the battlefield of the enemy, and though you are free in the natural, and though you're even free in the spirit, your mind stays bound, and though you are free, you stay caged. And that is the problem in the body of Christ today. One of the larger ones is that people who are freed by Jesus in the Spirit do not know how to leave the cage. It's not that the door's closed, the door's wide open. You just haven't stepped out of it yet. I call it slave mentality. Sometimes I refer to it as Egypt mentality, where you've been freed from bondage, but your mind reverts back to that. My example is in Numbers chapter 13. After the Israelites had been freed, somebody say after. Somebody say it was after the crossing of the Red Sea. Somebody say after. You know the Red Sea is the first picture of baptism. They went up, they crossed the water, came out on the other side, and their enemy was crushed under the water. It's the original picture of baptism. So these people, these Israelites, got saved, they got delivered, they got baptized. They came out on the other side, and then it was time to start a new journey. They were not where they were supposed to be. It wasn't the promised land. They weren't where they came from. They were in the wilderness, and this is where we learn a lot about the Israelites' mind. Somebody say the mind. I promise I'm not going to be up here long, so stay with me. It'll change your life if you do. Y'all still here? And so they get to a point where Moses sends spies to spy out this promised land. They were one step away. They were one wall to cross. Oh, they were so close to what God had promised them. They weren't unsaved, but they also weren't where God promised them they would be. Please hear me. Some of your, Jesus. For many of you, the problem is not that you're not saved. It's not that you're lost. The problem is that you're not yet where God asked you to go, and I'm about to tell you the reason why you're not there. So the spies come back, and they come back with grapes the size of their hands. They have to put it on they have to put it on two men's shoulders to carry it back. And they're like, so Moses said, they go for 40 days, and they say, Moses says, how's the land? And they say, oh my God. Oh, it does flow with milk and honey. Everything that God said about the land, they checked every box. Can I tell you, it checked every box. Everything God promised them was there because they spied it out and spied it out and spied it out. But then something interesting happens. 10 of these people, they sent 12 spies. 10 of them said this, nevertheless. You might say, but. Somebody say, but. That's the problem in the church. Your butt's too big. And he says this, nevertheless, watch this. Can I go here? Just for a minute. The people who live there are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. And moreover, like even bigger than that, like they saw walls, they saw people. But moreover, meaning more than that, this is a bigger deal. We saw descendants of Anak there. Amalek is there from the land of Negev, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites and the Canaanites, all these ites are living in this land. But listen, you just read it there. What really stunned them was the descendants of Anak. So I went and researched this. Where did the Israelites get delivered from? Tell me. Somebody say Egypt. The descendants of Anak are from Egypt. They go all the way back to the leaders of Egypt. So when the Israelites saw them, their mind went right back to Egypt. They did, yeah, I know, it's crazy. I know. Though they were, hear me, though they were free in their body, they were free physically. They were not in Egypt anymore. They weren't in chains and shackles. They weren't being beaten. They weren't being commanded and told what to do. They weren't being told when to eat, when to rise, when to go to bed. They were free. Somebody say they were free. They were free. But when they saw, when they locked eyes with the descendants of Egypt, their mind went back. Their bodies didn't, but their minds ran. But their minds went back to where they came from, and their minds went back to the chains. Their mind went back to the shackle. Their mind went back to the old days of being whipped. Their minds went back to the days of being beaten. Their mind went back to the days of being told what to do. Their minds went back to the days of being less than. And because their mind went back to the days of being less than, verse 33 says this, we became like grasshoppers. Pay attention to the phrase. We became like grasshoppers in our own sight. And so we were in theirs. Y'all still here? He said, when we saw these people in our minds, I knew I had to share this word at some point tonight, even if it was late, when his first young man testified. Because when he talked about his suicide and his thoughts, he said, I saw this was his words. Where is he out here? He said, I saw my life through the lens. And I knew as soon as he said it, I had to minister this. Please hear me. He was bound by his mind. He said, I saw my whole life through the lens of how I was brought up. That's why he couldn't see God, Because his whole life was, his whole vision was seen through the perception of his upbringing. This is why many church people can't dive into the river, because the river doesn't coincide with their religious upbringing. Oh, I'll preach that anyhow. I said their upbringing of religion, and we've got these songs are good and these songs are bad, and we've got to beat this church to the restaurant, and their religious upbringing has caused their mind to have a perception that if it looks anything other than what I was brought up in, it can't be God. We'll just hit all the perceptions tonight. Because I'm telling you, many of you have been freed in the Spirit. If your name is in the book of life, by God, you are free. For who the Son sets free is free indeed. If your name's in the book, you're free. It's time to get out of the cage. It's time to take a step. It's time to leave the corner of the kennel and walk into a new atmosphere, into a land that flows with milk and honey. And what if I told you that your bondage was only an illusion? It's only an illusion. You've been freed. These people got delivered, baptized, and still weren't free up here. This was after the Red Sea. This was post pool. Hear me. Even their enemies were crushed in the pool. And they still weren't free because of up here. Now watch what happens as a result of their lack. They call themselves grasshoppers in our own sight. And because they saw themselves as grasshoppers, their assumption was, everybody sees me this way. Can I go there? Their assumption was, because I feel this way, everybody feels this way about me. Because I feel low, everybody thinks because I think I'm scum, everybody thinks I'm scum. But it's not even anything anybody said. You made it up here. And you are in bondage by something that you made up in your own mind. I believe the greatest freedom tonight will come in the mind. When you're free in your mind, you'll step out of that kennel called your seat. Then you'll step into the pool, and you'll never be the same. Anybody in here already been baptized in this revival? Wow. Do you feel free? If you're free, clap your hands and shout right now. Let everybody know you're free. You'll never be the same. Your enemy got drowned in the water.